Now there's a good one. Oh, hey there, me filthy casuals. I'm just scouting me some offensive linemen for me San Francisco 49ers because they desperately need some for the upcoming 2025 season starting up in several months. So why don't you all join me in this filthy casual scouting of these offensive linemen that the 49ers so desperately need in this very casual episode of the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna, and this is episode number 252 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all your filthy casual takes, for your filthy casual sports fans out there like you and me. In this episode, we're going to be doing some scouting. We're going to be doing some scouting, mate. Not just any kind of scouting, some filthy casual scouting for some well-documented, some top-targeted, and some well-wished offensive linemen. Some offensive linemen that the 49ers so desperately need. Yes, my San Francisco 49ers are in desperate need to beef up, to repair their oh-so-broken offensive line that they, for whatever reason, have been neglecting for so many years, and this is the offseason to finally make it right. So in this episode, we're going to be doing our due diligence, our filthy casual due diligence, our quote-unquote scouting in this episode, as, well, the offseason, which has already been underway for my 49ers, but is now officially underway for the rest of the league. We can now officially do our quote-unquote filthy casual scouting report on some names that I have for the offensive linemen that the 49ers should be targeting here in this episode of the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. So before we get started with this episode, a little bit of housekeeping before we get the ball rolling. Make sure you follow Very Cold Lasagna on social media at Very Cold Lasagna. And if you're listening to this episode on whichever podcast platform that this show is available on, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, continue to do so and rate and review the show. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like button and smash the subscribe button if you're not already, which you should, by the way. Leave a comment down below with your own takes on the topic at hand, in this case being the 49ers and which offensive linemen, I say linemen because they need multiple, which ones they should go after and which ones you think that they can realistically get this upcoming offseason in free agency next month and the draft in 2 months. Let me know. Let's have a conversation about it. And as always, share this with your friends, share this with the neighbor, share this with a stranger, share this with your colleagues, whether it's at work or school. Share the good, the bad, the ugly about this filthy casual podcast entitled Very Cold Lasagna. So that being said, let's get into why exactly we're doing this filthy casual scouting report. So why are we doing another round robin of our filthy casual scouting report of our top targeted offensive linemen for my team, the San Francisco 49ers? Well, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. I have complained and moaned for how many seasons now? Well, actually, ever since I started doing the Very Cold Lasagna podcast about how they continue to neglect the pass protection of their quarterback, whether it was Jimmy Garoppolo under center, whether it was Trey Lance under center, whether it was Brock Purdy under center, even the backups that were under center. Ever since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have gotten here 7 to 8 years ago, they have often neglected the offensive line, with the exception of Trent Williams, Alex Mack, Dominic Pooney. Pretty much only 3 names that can come up at the top of my head. Like, those are the 3 standout names. But when those are the only 3 names that have been the pretty good ones for the 49ers, yeah, that's not good. It's only like one fifth, 2/3, half of the offensive line when you need a complete offensive line to protect your quarterback, especially in pass protection. And half of your O-line shouldn't be enough because it's led to injuries to the names I mentioned. Jimmy G, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, most recently. So, not good enough. So, especially going into this all-important offseason that's still going on for San Francisco, if the 49ers intend on making Brock Purdy their long-term investment, giving him this big, fat contract, then they have to do the same for his protection up front, especially in the passing game. There can't be any half-assery. They have to go balls to the wall with this protection. Just look at the Philadelphia Eagles, who most recently won the Super Bowl, and that very stout offensive line. Even though they lost, who did they lose to retirement last year? Oh, Jason Kelce. Even though they lost Jason Kelce last year, their offensive line didn't really miss a beat. They still have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Yeah, that was because Howie Roseman often prioritized that O-line to properly protect Jalen Hurts, to properly protect, in years past, Carson Wentz, to properly protect, heck, even in the Super Bowl run, from the first Super Bowl run against the Patriots in 2017, Nick Foles. So when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, for example, they've always had a really good offensive line. So when I put together this scouting report, I've always thought that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, this is always the one really bad area that they always sucked at, that they always neglected. So that's why I want to dedicate a full-on scouting episode on multiple prospects in both free agency and the draft that Kyle and John should look into, to, if they especially want to, finally, quote unquote, finish the story next year in what could be a special Super Bowl for them. Maybe it starts with finally investing in the proper protection that Brock Purdy needs. Something all quarterbacks need, because you don't want to go into 2025 with a half-assed offensive line once again. So, where do you even start? If you're Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch? Well, let's look at the money that you have available. So, going into this upcoming free agency for San Francisco, you have about $50 million in cap space. Obviously, they got to make some moves if they want to create even more for themselves. That can be done by giving Brock Purdy that big fat contract extension, some releases, some contract restructures, all the good fancy number stuff that I'm not all that big an expertise in. But when it comes to the topic at hand in this episode, the top positions for the offensive line that the 49ers really need to zone in on, because they already got the left tackle figured out, although they might want to consider getting ready for the potential retirement of Trent Williams in a couple years. So they might want to consider getting a backup left tackle. Doesn't hurt. They also might want to get some depth behind Dominic Pooney, even though they have the right guard pretty much solidified. So when it comes to this offseason for the 49ers, the top positions in desperate need of addressing are, well, the rest of the offensive line: center, left guard, and right tackle. And I know people say, oh, but Colt McKivitz has already had that right guard spot solidified. He didn't do that bad this year. Okay, but not bad is not good enough, in my opinion. So that being said, I have pretty much narrowed down a couple of options at each position, and not every position has like a set number, in my opinion, because there were just like so many like good options out there. Like, we gotta narrow our options and try to be a little bit realistic, in my opinion, and try. These are my wishes, but also my realistic wishes. when it comes in some alternatives, and some of them may be a little hypocritical, in my opinion. But nonetheless, that being said, after all the quote unquote scouting that I've done in preparation for this episode, let's get into what exactly options that the 49ers could go into when it comes to addressing the three positions: center, left guard, and right tackle. And we begin our journey into our little scouting of the 49ers positions of need of the offensive line with the center spot, because I feel like it's time to get rid of Jake Brendel. Jake Brendel is massive booty cheeks in the middle of the offensive line. After he snaps the ball, he gets burnt like complete toast starting in at that spot. So time to move on from him. Fortunately, he's an unrestricted free agent, so no need to re-sign his butt. So who do you go out and replace him with if you're San Francisco? If you're John Lynch, if you're Kyle Shanahan? Well, there are two potential options in free agency. The first option that most 49ers fans, and I can certainly agree with them, and that is from the Atlanta Falcons center Drew Dalman. So Drew Dalman is a former 2021 fourth round pick, and this free agent center, he earned the starting center role a year later in his second year, and never surrendered the role. He pretty much started every single game in his Falcons tenure, but although he did miss a game because of injury. So, but other than that, often started every single game for the Falcons at center. So he's been pretty reliable for the Falcons, and he is also entering free agency. And so far, with between both sides, it seems like they're willing to move on, but you never know. You never know. So looking at the good things about Drew Dalman, these again, decent starting experience after being named the starter in year 2. He has 40 games under his belt in 4 seasons with Atlanta. So you're pretty much, if he goes to San Francisco, you're getting an experienced starter under center, and not only that, you're getting a very strong passing and run blocker. So you're getting all the tangibles when it comes to Drew Dalman. And this past year, he made some pretty good strides in both areas. So pretty much exactly what you need when you're looking at it from the 49ers perspectives. But that being said, considering that he made his biggest improvement this year as a pass and run blocker, his contract could come pretty high. So yeah, like with how well he played this year, despite not being voted ever for a Pro Bowl or being named an All-Pro center, yeah, that price tag could be raised up a little bit, or maybe even more, based on his current $3.3 million that he's currently making right now. That could be, I'd say, doubled, in my opinion. So that's something that the Niners should consider. But in all honesty, overall, when you look at Drew Dalman, his pros outweighed the cons of his potential hefty price tag. And if the Niners, if they really want to go all in with this offensive line, Drew Dalman is the way to go. He's probably the priority center. No pun intended. He's the priority pick if you want to go out and sign a premium center in free agency. He comes in with plenty of starting experience. He's gotten better every year since being named the starter 2 years ago. So, in my opinion, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch should be going out there and trying to give him the best offer that they can give him. And hopefully they get him. So Drew Dalman would be target number 1. But for some reason, they don't get Drew Dalman. Then my second option would be from the LA Chargers, Bradley Bozeman. So Bradley Bozeman, for those of you unfamiliar with him, he's a former 2018 6th-round pick by the Baltimore Ravens. This free agent center, he's had stints not just with the Ravens, but also with the Carolina Panthers, and most recently this past season with the LA Chargers. So noting back to that said experience, that is one of his biggest strengths. He has started 93 of the 99 contests he's played for those three teams. So he brings in a lot of experience, which also makes him very reliable. Again, he's only missed 6 games. He's not missed 6 games. He hasn't started 6 games. And not only that, he's only missed just 1 contest in 2021 with the Ravens due to injury. So other than missing that 1 contest and not really being a starter in the other 5 contests, Bradley Bozeman has been very reliable for whatever team he's played for. And not only that, when it comes to skills, he's a very good run blocker. He does a really good job, holding out whichever direction the running back needs to go. And he pushes out either the defensive line or the linebacker to create a big running lane for his running back. So when you look at Bradley Bozeman at center in the interior, he does very well in the running game. Something I would be concerned with for Bozeman is his pass blocking, though, because Bozeman tends to either lose his assignment or he gets overpowered by his opposition. So that's something I would be a little bit weary about with Bozeman. He's pretty inconsistent in pass protection in the interior. And then even though Bradley Bozeman is a pretty good run blocker, he can tend to over pursue at times and get overzealous trying to help out both the running back and when it comes to pass protecting his quarterback. So overall, when you look at Bradley Bozeman, he could be a quality pickup at the right price. He may even come cheaper for the 49ers if Drew Dalman ends up being gone. But whoever the 49ers offensive line coach is, he's going to have to help Bozeman clean up some of his pass blocking issues. But I still think that Bozeman could be, I'd say, a solid pickup at center if Drew Dalman ends up being gone for whatever reason. But I believe Dalman should be the priority pickup for the 49ers. But again, if Dalman ends up being gone, going to another team, then Bradley Bozeman should be the alternative priority. So now we move on from the center spot and move on to the second priority at hand, and that is left guard. Left guard play for the 49ers this past season has been pretty on and off because Aaron Banks, he was in and out of the lineup because of injury, and even when he was in the lineup, he has had some spotty play in pass protection. As a run blocker, he was okay, but we could certainly upgrade at the position because the best kind of ability is availability. So when it comes to the left guard spot, we can certainly use an upgrade. And the first person that I'd like to note at that position is from the reigning, defending, undisputed Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, and that is Mekhi Becton. Now, sure, even though he really played right guard, some may question me on that. So let's talk about what Mekhi Becton brings to the table first. Mekhi Becton was actually a first-round pick back in 2020 by the New York Jets, and he's an unrestricted free agent that initially struggled with injuries during his time with Gang Green, but he showed plenty of potential when he was healthy. And he's coming off his best year playing right guard, and after initially starting out at right tackle. But again, like I said, coming off his best year in Philadelphia, playing right guard, and coming off as a Super Bowl champion. So that transitions over to his strengths. He brings championship experience if he comes over from Philadelphia to the 49ers. And some of his other strengths include his size. He's a 6'7" guard that weighs over 300 pounds. And when he's in the lineup, in the rotation for Philadelphia, his size has greatly helped him finish plays and, more importantly, protect the quarterback this past season, that being Jalen Hurts. And another strength of his is his versatility. Becton, really good pass blocker that can play both tackle and guard. And he's also shown a really good willingness to adapt to new positions. This past season, started becoming the starting right guard for the Eagles. And now, well, certainly if he comes over to the 49ers, he would have to try to learn left guard, because Dominic Pooney has that right guard spot on lockdown. So, yeah, he would certainly have to learn left guard, but I feel like, Becton would have a very good willingness to learn that spot. But obviously, he does come with a sketchy injury history. He has struggled to stay healthy with a litany of injuries during his time with the Jets. And he also had a bit of an injury scare during this past Super Bowl, although he did come back to play during that game. So when it comes to Mekhi Becton, he could be signed to another potential bargain deal if he is willing to learn how to play left guard and he can stay healthy. And if he comes at the right price for the 49ers, but he's coming off his best season with Philadelphia. Who knows? He may even want to resign with the Eagles, but that remains to be seen. But if the Niners can somehow get him, if he's willing to play left guard, then it'll be a win for them. But if they don't get Mekhi Becton, there are plenty of other options out there. One of those options being from the Chicago Bears, Tevin Jenkins. This is a former 2021 second-round pick from Chicago, and this free agent left guard, he has been one of the best offensive linemen for the Bears. Although it's not really saying much, because the Bears, they had a lot of offensive line troubles for the last couple of years now. And Tevin Jenkins is one of those offensive linemen. For as good as he is, he's had some of his own troubles. Mainly, like with Mekhi Becton, staying healthy. But that doesn't mean he has shown potential that is untapped. So with Mekhi Becton, one of his biggest strengths is positional versatility. So with not Mekhi Becton, it's Tevin Jenkins. We moved on from Mekhi Becton. So Tevin Jenkins, anyway, during his time with the Bears, just like with Mekhi Becton, he's known to be very flexible with playing multiple spots. He can play both guard spots. He can play left tackle. Because, well, due to the ever-changing nature of their offensive line, he had to adapt to new positions, and yet he has done, I'd say, pretty well at that. He's probably the best offensive lineman for the Bears, although, again, not really saying much. Not Becton. Tevin Jenkins, again, very good in run blocking, using his overwhelming upper body strength, and has very good hand usage to defeat run defenders, to open up running lanes for whoever was at running back for the Bears. So when you look at Tevin Jenkins, a very good run blocker, and can play multiple positions on that offensive line. But unfortunately, he has a very lengthy injury history, probably more so than the first person I mentioned, which was Mekhi Becton. How many times did I mention that guy? You tell me. But anyway, moving on, Tevin Jenkins, he hasn't played a full season during his entire tenure, not just with the Bears, but in general in the NFL. Although the closest he's came to doing such was this past season. he's only missed one full game, but it's not really saying much because this past season, he only played 50% of the offensive snaps because he's played through multiple injuries. And I don't believe he's, even though he's played through those multiple injuries, he didn't really start half of those games. So he comes in with a pretty sketchy injury history that the Niners may want to be very wary of. But if the Niners do want to take a crack at him, maybe at a discounted price, he brings in a very good skill set for a versatile offensive lineman that can play multiple spots. I would just be very careful of that big red flag, that being his long list of injuries, dating back to his time when he started in the NFL back in 2021. And then the last guy on our list is actually one that is on our team, is an impending free agent, and that is Ben Bartch. Now, not much is known about Ben Bartch because, I tried looking this guy up in the NFL, and there's not really much. But from what I gathered, he is a 2020 4th-round pick from the all-elite Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Niners actually did pick him up late in 2023 off their practice squad, and this past year he got a little bit more playing time in 2024 when Aaron Banks was sidelined before Ben Bartch himself got hurt and was put on injury reserve with an ankle injury. So from the little playing time, from the little film that we got out of Ben Bartch, he has some really good hand placement in pass protection, as evident in game action against Ed Oliver from the Bills in that Week 13 snow matchup. He seems like he's a solid run blocker that can win battles and open up running lanes. But again, it goes back to my point earlier. There isn't a lot of playing time that he's had due to injury or being on the practice squad. Like Bartch missed most of 2022 with the Jaguars with a dislocated knee. And then 2 years ago in 2023, he missed the part of the season because he was underperforming. And then he got waived, and then he got put on the practice squad before the Niners picked him up. And then this past month of the last season, this past season, he missed the last month with an ankle injury. So Bartch, he didn't really get too many reps in the playing time that he got because, he was just a fill-in for Aaron Banks. So overall, when you look at whether or not the Niners should re-sign Ben Bartch, I'd say, I think they should. Even though Ben Bartch doesn't really have a lot of playing experience, but hey, that's why you gotta take the gamble on the guy, right? You gotta take some gambles, and I feel like Ben Bartch should be one of those gambles at competing for the starting left guard spot. And even if he doesn't win that starting spot, he could still be a rotational player, and especially in the event that whoever does beat the starting left guard, they get hurt. So Ben Bartch should be a player that the Niners should go and re-sign, considering that he showed some potential for the 49ers in the very little playing time that he had last year. But also remember that they also should sign another left guard to go and compete with them. Preferably, the ones that I either mentioned or maybe there's one out there in the draft. So speaking of the draft, the rest of the candidates on this quote unquote scouting report are all in the draft. And the final position that we're going to be looking at and scouting in air quotes is at the right tackle spot, because again, some people are saying that Colton McKivitz, he didn't have a bad year this year, but let's remember, him and Spencer Burford were the people that cost the 49ers the Super Bowl a year ago. Okay, So I don't want to hear any of that bullcrap that, Colton McKivitz should stay. Nah. So anyway, an upgrade at the right tackle spot is a necessity. So who should be that upgrade, and who should be either that 11th overall pick? Actually, that should be the move at number 11 overall. Finding that right tackle. Finding that right tackle to replace Colton McKivitz, be that upgrade for Brock Purdy, blind side. Be that blind side protector, pal. So we have 4 potential candidates in this upcoming NFL draft. The first potential candidate probably may be gone, but you never know. They may slide. Is from Louisiana State University, and that's Will Campbell. So Will Campbell, he comes from LSU, where he is a top playmaker on their offensive line. He comes in with a very strong skill set and some pretty good toughness. So what I like about Will Campbell, he has a very strong base. Base being good feet, good feet placement. He can absorb and dish out a lot of force against opposing edge rushers. Got some great hand usage in both pass and run blocking. So always want that with your offensive tackles. And he's just a patient blocker in general. So when you have a bunch of bull rushers coming at you, you're basically want to be blocking for your life. And Will Campbell is pretty patient with his hand usage and trying to fend off defenders. But at the same time, some of the things I would be a little bit wary of is that he can be too aggressive against high level rushes, which can lead to him drifting away from his assignment and leave an opening for pass rushers to go and get the quarterback. So that's the one big thing that I saw with Will Campbell. But other than that, I'd say Campbell is going to be a strong day one starter if the Niners somehow manage to snag him up on the offensive line. And if he somehow falls into the lap of the 49ers at the 11th pick, or if they make a gutsy move to trade up a few spots, they need to go and get him. They need to go and get him and get his playability and toughness. But if Will Campbell is not there for their right tackle spot, there are plenty of other options out there. Like, for example, Ohio State tackle Josh Simmons. So what does Josh Simmons bring to the table? Well, Josh Simmons is a 3-year starter who originally spent 2 years at San Diego State before moving over to Ohio State University prior to 2023. And he continued to make his presence felt as a left tackle. Now I know you're probably thinking, why are you talking about a left tackle when this portion of the episode is all about right tackles? And that's exactly what the 49ers need, a right tackle upgrade. Well, perhaps the Niners could help him make the move back to right tackle. And considering that was one of his biggest strengths, in Josh Simmons, he brings versatile starting experience at both tackle spots. Josh Simmons actually first started out as a right tackle in San Diego State and Ohio State, starting 13 games apiece before fully moving over to left tackle for the rest of his collegiate career. So, just because Josh Simmons currently lists as the left tackle doesn't mean he can move back over to right tackle. So, yeah, he has some experience as both. He also is a physically imposing run blocker that is very quick to close the gap on defenders before contact, which again leaves that big opening for running backs. He also is very handsy. He has very good feet movement, and which allows him one of the cleanest passing stances for an offensive tackle. What I would be a little bit worried though for him heading into the pros is, despite being an opposing run blocker, he lets run defenders slip by a little bit late. So in other words, he can get a little too handsy. If he gets a little too handsy, then the run defenders can slip by him. And he's also coming off a major injury, that being an ACL tear, which could hurt his draft stock for a bit and have teams a little bit weary for him. And that includes my 49ers. So overall, when you look at Josh Simmons, he's a big, athletic, and versatile tackle that can play both spots, the left and the right. And he has the assets necessary to succeed in quickness, agility, and size, and strength as well. I mean, I'd still be worried, though, about that ACL tear. That's probably going to be something that if the Niners are scouting, I hope they are scouting. They better be. And they also have to be looking carefully at that ACL tear of his. And as long as that doesn't damper his path to the draft, at the scouting combine and his pro day, all that stuff leading up to the draft. And if the Niners aren't hampered by that, if they're convinced that he's going to be good for them, then and go and take him if Will Campbell is not there for them. But for somehow, some way that neither Will Campbell or Josh Simmons is not there for them, then they got more options. Like from the University of Texas, Kelvin Banks Jr. This 3-year starter at left tackle, Kelvin Banks Jr. brings good athletic ability. He's got a solid build, got pretty decent arm length, and pretty average play strength. So what else does Kelvin Banks Jr. bring to the table? Well, with his pros, he's got very good hand usage, but even better foot movement and pass protection. So his foot movement, he's pretty aware where the pass rusher is going to be, in other words. He's also known to bait some pass rushers with a strong understanding of high to low hand usage to slow down their inside moves. So his hand movement can be pretty good in detecting of, well, where the heck the pass rusher is going to go in filthy casual terms. Some things I would be a little concerned with when it comes to Kelvin Banks Jr. for my filthy casual fans out there is his run blocking. Not necessarily his best point, because he has trouble squaring up with a defensive lineman. He can't really provide some good paths for his running back, and he has average arm length, and which can get him into trouble against trying to shed off opposing linemen. So overall, Kelvin Banks can be a pretty good option for the 49ers because he is an athletic pass protector who does well in combo blocks, but in one-on-one attempts, he can struggle on running plays and any longer developing pass protections. Some scouts have also noted that Kelvin Banks should move over to guard due to his body type, but if the Niners do end up getting him, keeping him at right tackle, moving in over there, wouldn't be the worst idea in the world as long as they develop him properly. So, wouldn't be my ideal pick at right tackle, but if they got to go there, they got to go there. And if somehow he's not there either, then we have one final option at hand. We have one last option at hand, and that is from the University of Missouri, right tackle, Armand Membo. This 2-year starter at right tackle, Membo, he brings a dense and extra thick, yes, TICC build with some very nice arm length. He brings a competitive toughness in him and some pretty nice strength in him. So speaking of strengths, with Armand Membo, he has some very quick foot movement. So he brings, in other words, quickness in him, and that makes him explosive with a dense, extra thick, with the double C's build. So it makes him pretty quick to the point of attack in trying to protect his quarterback and opening up some running lanes. So he can also beat widely aligned rushers, going back to pass protection and being a a run blocker with his raw strength and natural power, all while remaining pretty balanced and poised, and most importantly, showed some great improvement in technique throughout this past collegiate season. But what I would be concerned with, though, with Mambu is his hand movement. He does have some decent hand movement, but he can be late at times trying to shed off pass rushers. And you also have trouble lining up with said rushers in space in the running game, allowing for penetration, allowing them to get through and stop running backs. So when it comes to this final final offensive lineman, Mambu is pretty young. I believe he's in his early 20s, so it makes him the youngest prospect out of this bunch. But yet he's loose, very explosive, and he's also a pure right tackle with a powerful build that can be a great matchup in pass protection, which is something that the Niners can greatly benefit from. It's a fight that the 49ers do end up getting him. They do have to clean up his hand movement and aiming points against opposing defensive linemen. Still, I do think that, in my opinion, this is probably one of the top targets that the 49ers should be going after when it comes to right tackles and pretty much offensive tackles in general, other than Josh Simmons and Will Campbell in the draft. Given Mambu's very strong physical and pass protection skills, and pretty much the willingness to clean up any other aspects in his game that are, considered flaws for him. So overall, when you look at all these potential targets that the Niners should be going after in both free agency and the draft, there are plenty of options at hand for San Francisco. And honestly, most of them at least are pretty realistic. The main ones I would be going after, in my opinion, out of this list is Drew Dalman from the Falcons, and then in the draft is Armand Mambu and Will Campbell, and then I'd say at left guard, if possible, I know he has an injury history, but Mekhi Becton from the Eagles. So, yeah, that is my filthy casual scouting report on the potential list of linemen that the 49ers should and must be going after in this offseason, with free agency and the draft coming up real soon. But I'd like to know what you guys think. What you guys think that the 49ers should go after when it comes to tackles and guards to finally beef up this protection for Brock Purdy for next fall. So let's have a conversation about it in the comments on YouTube, or slide into my DMs on social media at Very Cold Lasagna, or on the episode post on Twitter or Instagram that's promoting the episode. Let's have a conversation about it, because, yeah, the Niners desperately, absolutely desperately need to beef up that offensive line to finally protect their quarterback and keep him upright if they finally want to finish their story this time next year. But that is it for now when it comes to talking about my San Francisco 49ers and this offseason. If there's anything else to talk about them when it comes to pressing needs, offseason news, we'll definitely be back here on the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast to do so. When it comes to breaking headlining news or like some other topics that I might want to cover, other than, the season preview that's months ahead for this team. But for now, that is it for this episode of the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm been your host, Dylan Lasagna, signing out of another episode number 252 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all your filthy casual takes on the world of sports. And until the next one, keep the lasagna very cold in the fridge. Let me know which offensive lineman that the 49ers should go after in free agency and the draft. But until then, until I see you, when I see you in the next episode, peace out.